A receptionist told him he didn't belong in the building minutes before he was supposed to close on a $1,000 deal. What happened next brought an entire company to its knees. The rain wasn't heavy, just enough to blur the glass doors. Outside Holston and Royce Consulting in downtown Minneapolis, inside the marble-tiled lobby, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead and a faint scent of fresh espresso hung in the air. People in tailored jackets clicked past with earbuds in and phones glued to their palms. Everyone looked like they had somewhere important to be. Terrence Dupree walked through the door quietly, unnoticed. At first he wore a dark navy trench coat, not designer, just functional, and held a leather briefcase that had clearly seen a few years, no Rolex on his wrist, no bodyguard at his side. Just a tall black man 44 with clear eyes and a calm presence that didn't demand attention but maybe should have. The receptionist looked up from her desk as he approached. Her name tag Saeed Hegane, and she couldn't have been older than 26. Blonde bob, thick lashes, AirPods in one ear. She barely made eye contact before flicking her gaze to the clock behind him. "Hi, I have a 10 a.m. with the executive board, Terrence," said voice, steady polite. She blinked at him. "For what department I'm here to meet with?" "The board of directors, it's scheduled. I'm Terrence Dupree." He waited, gave her a moment to register. Instead, she smirked. "Right, you're with what?" "Again, sales. Vendors don't use this entrance, no," he replied calmly. "I'm the CEO of D-Tech Solutions." She leaned back in her chair like she didn't believe. A word of it glanced down at her monitor with a dramatic sigh. "I don't see your name here," she said. "Maybe you have the wrong building." He didn't flinch. "This is 1224 Wabash Avenue, right?" She rolled her eyes. "Yeah, but like I said, we don't let outside vendors wait around up here. If you're dropping something off, go through loading back entrance." Terrence paused just for a second. Not because he didn't know what to say, but because he'd seen this movie before. He didn't argue. He didn't flash credentials or make a scene. He looked at her for a beat, gave the smallest nod, and then turned toward the exit. As he reached the door, a junior associate stepped off. The elevator. Young guy, probably fresh out of college, froze mid-step when he saw Terrence. His eyes widened. "Mr. Dupree," he said, breath-catching. "Wait, sir, you're here early. They're still—" Terrence raised a hand gently. "No worries," he said, not breaking stride. "Tell them thank you for the opportunity." He pushed open the door and stepped back into the street. The associate stood, frozen mouth half open, before the elevator doors closed again. Behind him, back at the front desk, Megan went back to scrolling her phone, not realizing her smirk was about to be the most expensive one in company history. But what they didn't know was who they'd just turned away. Terrence Dupree wasn't born into power. He wasn't handed keys to corner offices or trust funds or polished networks. He was born in Mobile, Alabama, in a two-bedroom house that leaned just a little to the left. After a storm in '92, his mother worked nights as a hospital custodian, and his father, when he was around, hustled car repairs out of their driveway. Terrence learned early how to make things work, even when things didn't work right. What he lacked in privilege, he made up for in precision. He wasn't loud, didn't run his mouth. But when he did speak, you listened because he didn't waste words. The time he was 16, he had already built a functioning desktop out of discarded school parts, not to play games, but to learn how they talked to each other every night. While other kids were texting girls and sneaking out, he was teaching himself how to write code on a broken monitor propped up with a phone book. He got into Tuskegee University on a partial scholarship, finished top 5% of his class, didn't. Rush a frat, didn't go to many parties. He was building something, and he knew Ithis First Company, a small platform for managing mobile team schedules, was coded in a two-bedroom apartment above a laundromat in Birmingham. It failed. He didn't sulk. He reworked it the second one. Same idea, better delivery that got acquired, but Detect Solutions, that was the one that changed the game, Built it from the ground up, no angel investors, no flashy launch, just contracts, clean delivery, and systems that worked by year 4. Major logistics companies were using it to coordinate truck shipments across the Southwest. He kept his circle tight, his books clean, and his office door open. By the time he was 44, he had turned D-Tech into one of the fastest-growing SaaS firms in the region. Not Silicon Valley, not New York. Not L.A. He didn't need those zip codes to validate him. Now Holston and Royce, the firm that just told him to get lost, were set to sign a partnership deal with him, worth $40,000. The deal had been in the works for nearly 7 months. His team had flown out. Twice background checks, paperwork, projections, all cleared. The final meeting was a formality. They just wanted to meet the man himself before closing. They got their chance and they blew it. Because he didn't walk in with a badge swinging around his neck, because he didn't look like their idea of authority, because their front desk gatekeeper couldn't picture him sitting across from their boardroom table. Terrence had seen this before at banks, at hotels, even at tech conferences where people assumed he was part of the catering staff. But here's the thing, he didn't get angry. He never did. He didn't take it personally. Not because it wasn't personal, but because giving them that power would have meant they won something and they hadn't. As he walked down Wabash Avenue with the rain misting against his coat, his phone buzzed. Twice he checked the screen, a message from his VP in Phoenix confirming everything was green-lit for the contract signing next week. Terrence stopped, looked up at the skyline, and made a decision right there on the sidewalk. One move just. He scrolled to a number in his phone labeled Travis R. Archon Systems. He tapped. But back in Minneapolis, he had one choice, and he made it without a single word. The call connected in 2 rings. Terrence came. The voice on the other end, half surprised, half amused. "Man, you don't usually call me unless someone screwed up. Who is it this time?" Terrence gave a faint chuckle. "Travis, I've got something for you. You at your desk?" "Yeah, what's going on?" Terrence stepped under the awning of a sandwich shop, across from the Holston and Royce building. He kept his tone calm. "Even remember, that platform integration." Holston's been dragging their feet on Travis's tone shifted. He leaned in. "Yeah, you were supposed to be closing with them today, right? I was until their front desk decided I wasn't worth the elevator ride." There was silence. For a moment on the line, then Travis laughed, short, sharp, almost disbelieving. "You're kidding." "Nope. Receptionist told me to leave, didn't even check." "The calendar, that's wild," Travis muttered. "You walk in there in a hoodie or something, just a coat and a briefcase? I guess it wasn't shiny enough." Travis let out a slow whistle. "Let me guess they thought you were a delivery guy." "More like a vendor," Terrence replied either way. Not worth their time. Travis was quiet again, this time for longer. Then he said, "You serious about what I think you're about to say?" Terrence took a breath. "I'm ready to redirect. The deal, if Archon can meet the same terms, and I mean all of them. You know, we can. Our lawyers already reviewed the last draft. We were ready to. Months ago, good, Terrence said, then consider it yours. I'll have my general counsel reach out by EOD. We'll move fast." Travis didn't hide his excitement. "Terrence, I don't know what to say. Man, I mean, that's huge." "Say thank you," Terrence said, with a trace of warmth. "And don't make me regret it. You won't. I swear." Terrence ended. The call slipped. The phone back into his coat. He didn't linger across the street. The Holston and Royce Tower looked just the same as it had 30 minutes ago. Tall, proud, expensive. But to Terrence, it already looked hollow inside. In the boardroom on the 29th floor, a glass pitcher of cucumber water sat untouched, 9 chairs around. The table were filled with senior partners, executives, and the lead negotiator who kept checking his watch. Still nothing. One of them asked, "No call? No text?" The negotiator said he confirmed. "Yesterday, he's never done this." A senior partner frowned. "Send someone down to check." An intern rushed down. The elevator breathless. He came back shaking his head. No sign of him reception. Said someone came in earlier but they turned him away. Thought he was a contractor. Silence swept the room like a sudden draft. You're telling me they didn't even let him in? The negotiator asked slowly. That's... What she said murmurs turned into confusion. Confusion turned into unease. A couple executives started typing furiously on their phones. Then a woman in a gray pantsuita, sharp-eyed partner named Simone Barkley spoke up. If he walked out and if he's serious about this deal, it's already gone. But maybe someone began, no, you don't walk away from 7 months of negotiation unless you already know exactly where to go next. That man doesn't bluff. We just insulted one of the sharpest operators in this industry, and we did it at our front desk. Nobody said a word. The negotiator finally asked, should we reach out? Barkley shook her head. You can try, but it won't matter. Across town, Terrence stepped into a ride-share heading for the airport as the car pulled away from the curb. He didn't look back. He knew what came next, and he didn't need to see. It happened to feel it. But the boardroom upstairs was still. Waiting unaware, their moment had already passed by the time Monday morning rolled. Around Halston and Royce's boardroom didn't just feel tense, it felt electric in all the wrong ways. Nobody had heard from Terrence Dupree. No emails, no calls, no. One on his team was replying either not even a cold. We've decided to move in another direction. Nothing. Silence. The receptionist, Megan, was back at her post, sipping a cold brew through a green straw, tapping through photos from her weekend brunch. She glanced at the revolving doors once or twice, waiting to see the man from Friday. Deep down, she thought, maybe he'd return. Maybe he'd come crawling back, with an apology or some delivery paperwork. But nothing upstairs. In a tense internal meeting, the firm's leadership team tried to spin the no-show into a temporary hiccup. Maybe he had a personal emergency. One partner said maybe he's trying to pressure us for better terms, said. Another, Simone Barkley, calm and sharp as ever, shook her head. Terrence Dupree doesn't play games like that. If he's gone quiet, it's not by accident that afternoon. The confirmation came Archeon Systems, Halston and Royce's closest competitor posted a formal press release. We are thrilled to announce a strategic integration with Detect Solutions, the leading logistics optimization platform in the Midwest. This partnership marks a pivotal moment in the industry. The email hit inboxes at 2:03 p.m. by 2:15. The boardroom was dead. Silent. Nobody spoke. Someone actually dropped their pen. A senior advisor, gray-haired and tight-lipped, pushed his chair back and muttered, well, that's the damn ball game. Someone turned to Simone. Can we claw it back? Simone didn't blink. You can't uninsult a man like that downstairs. Megan still had no idea. It wasn't until later that evening, after her shift during a drink with her friend from HR, that she learned who Terrence really was. Her friend leaned across the table, lowered her voice. You know that deal we were working on for like half a year? Yeah, the tech thing. That was the guy you turned away on Friday. Megan blinked. No way. That guy. Her friend nodded, lips tight. He's worth more than our entire quarterly profit you told him to get. Lost, Megan laughed, nervous. Okay, but he didn't say he was that important. He did, Megan. You just didn't listen. The next morning, HR started sending emails about front-facing personnel, protocols, and gatekeeping sensitivity training. Megan was pulled into a meeting by a supervisor who used words like reputation damage and public perception. She kept asking, how was I supposed to know? But nobody had a good answer, because that was the problem. Meanwhile, Terrence was already deep in talks with Archeon's executive team. He had moved fast, signed within 3 days. The partnership gave Archeon access to DTEC's proprietary scheduling AN advantage that immediately set them leagues. Ahead of Holston and Royce, clients started to notice one by one companies that had relied on Holston for years, began calling with questions, then cancellations, then silence in a span of 10 business days. Holston lost 3 major contracts and a prospective government pilot deal that had been 2 years in the making. Investors got nervous. Shares dropped 12 per 100 in a week by Friday. One of the senior partners who had vouched for Megan's hiring quietly resigned. But the real consequences hadn't even begun to hit the Monday after the stock dip. The office didn't feel the same. Executives who once greeted each other with handshakes now passed in silence. Hallway conversations ended when certain people walked by. Even the janitorial staff seemed to sense something had shifted. The receptionist's desk sat empty for most of the morning. Megan didn't show up. Word floated around that she'd been placed on unpaid leave pending review. Nobody said it out loud, but everyone knew it had to do with him. The man in the coat. The one she waved away like a flyer distributor upstairs in the executive suite. The walls were closing in. The head of partnerships, Mark Keller, had spent the weekend doing damage control, reaching out to clients, explaining the unforeseen disruption in the D-Tech partnership. But every call felt like chasing a Shadow 1 client from Des Moines. Didn't even wait for his pitch. "You lost D-Tech," the man said flatly. "We'll be moving our business to Archeon Clicken." 1 week, the firm had lost over $18,000 in projected earnings, and there was no slowing down. Simone Barkley sat quietly at her desk, scrolling through LinkedIn. She knew this moment would come, not just because of the blunder, but because of what it exposed. Their arrogance had always been their secret weakness. They built success on pedigree connections, the right image, but somewhere along the way they forgot that real power didn't always wear a 3-piece suit. Simone had been the one to push for Terrence's deal from the start. She respected what he'd built. She admired his silence, his restraint, and now watching it all fall apart. She couldn't even say she was surprised. The press caught wind next. One blog out of St. Paul broke the story: tech giant D-Tech walks away from major deal. After being snubbed in lobby signs with competitor instead, the headline went viral within hours. Business outlets picked it up. Reddit forums dissected it. Twitter blew up with hot takes. Most people didn't know Terrence personally, but they all had a story like his. A time they were judged, dismissed, underestimated, and now the internet had found its folk. Hero people started digging into Megan's old posts. Screenshots surfaced. Nothing outright cruel, but just enough sarcasm, just enough tone to light the fire. Holston and Royce tried to put out the flames. They issued a vague statement about reevaluating internal procedures and strengthening inclusivity efforts, but nobody cared. The damage had a face and a name. Terrence. Dupree, however, never said a word publicly. No statements, no press tour, no tweets. Just silence, and that silence said more than any speech ever could. By the end of the month, the firm's top 2 clients had pulled their contracts. A third one from Cincinnati was in negotiations with Archeon, citing confidence concerns behind closed doors. Senior leadership had a different conversation. They blamed each other. Some wanted heads to roll, others called for a total rebrand. Mark Keller resigned that Thursday, effective immediately, and Megan, she was quietly let go. No farewell email, no HR send-off, just a manila envelope and a short walk to the elevators. She didn't look angry when she left, just stunned, as if the weight of it hadn't really landed until the doors closed behind her, but everyone else knew. The dominoes had fallen, and the hands that tipped them didn't belong to someone loud or angry. They belonged to someone quiet, someone who didn't need to scream to be heard. But the final blow came from the most unexpected place. 2 months later, just as Minneapolis was thawing from a stubborn March cold, Terrence Dupree returned. He didn't announce it. No emails, no calendar invites, no cameras. He walked in through the same glass doors wearing The same dark coat carrying the same worn briefcase, only this time. The security guard on duty stood up as soon as he saw him and radioed upstairs within minutes. Someone from the executive floor was on their way down to meet him. Terrence didn't speak to the front desk. He didn't even glance at it. There was no Megan there anymore, just a quiet temp named Rosalind, who offered a polite good morning. Without recognizing the man in front of her, he nodded once barely and waited. Simone Barkley was the one who greeted him. She stepped off the elevator in a tailored black coat, her expression unreadable but not cold. She didn't offer a handshake right away, just a quiet Terrence as though she were acknowledging something overdue. He returned, her name with the same calm tone. "Simone, appreciate you coming," she said, "even if it's not for what we hoped." He didn't reply to that. Not right away. They walked together to a small private conference room on the 3rd floor. Nothing fancy, no big views. Just 2 chairs, a table, and a carafe of coffee someone had thoughtfully left, though neither of them touched. "It's Simone." "Sat down. I'll be straight with you. The firm's taken a beating. We lost 5 major contracts. 2. More are pulling back our reputations." "Well, you know," Terrence said. "Nothing. We've made changes." Simone went on. "The people responsible for what happened, they're no longer with us." "That's good," Terrence replied calmly. "But that's not really why I'm here." Simone folded her hands. "Then why, Terrence?" Looked her in the eye because someone asked me if I was ever going to say anything publicly about what happened. She held his gaze. Waiting, and I told them no. He said because I wasn't interested in revenge, that's not how I work. Simone exhaled a subtle, almost invisible breath of relief. "I came," he added, because I needed to see what I walked away from to remind myself I made the right call. There was silence between them, sharp but respectful. Then Simone said, "You did." He stood. The meeting had taken less than 8 minutes. As they walked back toward the elevators, a group of interns passed them in the hallway. One of them, a young black woman in a brown blazer, slowed when she saw Terrence. Her eyes widened just slightly, just enough to let him know she knew exactly who he was. She didn't say anything, just gave a respectful, subtle nod. He returned. It back in the lobby as Terrence moved to the door, his eyes flicked once toward the receptionist's desk. Rosalind was busy on the phone, organizing visitor badges. She didn't notice him watching. But the desk looked different now, not because of who sat behind it, but because of what it used to represent. He stepped out onto the sidewalk. Without a word, the wind tugged at his coat, and for the first time since the failed meeting, he allowed himself a small smile. Not smug, not satisfied, just certain back inside. Simone stood in the lobby for a moment longer, watching him disappear. Into the crowd, a man. They could have built something. Powerful with a man. They misread, underestimated, dismissed, and yet he'd given them the rarest gift of all, grace. But the lesson stayed with everyone who witnessed it. It's easy to talk about power like it always announces itself, like it walks into a room with a red carpet name tags and a round of applause, but real power, the kind that moves without noise, that doesn't need to explain itself. That power looks a lot like Terrence Dupree. No titles stitched on his chest, no entourage, just a man, his work and the history that shaped him. Holston and Royce learned something. The hard way. Something most people don't figure out until it's too late. It's not just bad business to judge someone by how they look. It's short-sighted, it's lazy. It's a kind of blindness. You don't notice until everything's burning and you're wondering who struck. The match Terrence didn't destroy that company with a press release or a smear campaign. He didn't need to. He just chose to take his value somewhere. It would be respected. And in doing so, he reminded a lot of people loudly, silently, that respect doesn't trickle down from wealth or clout or image. It rises from character, from how you treat someone when you think they have nothing to offer you. And maybe that's what stung the most for the firm, not The money lost, not the headlines, but the knowledge that it could have been avoided with just an ounce of humility. There are Megans in every office, every company, people who make snap judgments because someone doesn't fit their picture of success. Sometimes they do. It quietly. Sometimes with a laugh, sometimes with a line, like you don't belong here. But what if that person is the opportunity? What if they're the one holding the key to your future? What if they're already 10 steps ahead and you just slammed the door in your own face? This wasn't just a cautionary tale for corporate America, it's a lesson for all of us about decency, patience, and slowing down long enough to see people really see them, not for what they wear, not for how they speak, but for who they are and what they bring to the table. Because the truth is, character walks into the room long before credentials do. And if you can't recognize it, you don't deserve the benefits it brings. So, the next time someone shows up looking different than you expected, pause, listen. Ask, don't assume. Because the cost of arrogance isn't just financial. Sometimes it's your reputation, your partnerships, your future. And once it's gone, you don't always get a second shot. If this story made you think or hit close to home, don't scroll past share. Talk about it, and if you haven't already subscribed, we've got more stories just like this, and every single one holds a mirror to the world we live in.